One of the most beautiful features of New York are the big bridges. And again, I feel the telephoto lens does a much better job in photographing them than the standard lens because it gives you the feeling of monumentality. Shot with a normal lens or wide-angle lens, the bridge stretches out endlessly and looks like a toy or skinny. Well, here you feel the massiveness of these powerful stone towers. This is another mood. This shows the importance of light for mood of a picture. Actually, this is the same bridge, and you asked me before what is important to me, light and mood, and which is the best moment to shoot something. And I say it depends what you want. Now this I think is a good example because I think both pictures are valid and equally good, but very, very different. They show different moods, different aspects of the same subject. This to me has the eerie quality of a Joseph Conrad tale, you know, that old-fashioned bridge and old-fashioned freighter here in the fog. This is a shot of the George Washington Bridge, shot with a 40-inch lens, and again you get the proportions right. In other words, the cars are as small, or seem as small as they really are in reality in relation to the immense size of the bridge. If you shoot that with a standard lens from close by, you get a completely distorted picture, what I call distorted. Here you have the feeling of the immensity of this bridge.
Do you think that photographs like this interpret reality rather than representing it?
Both. Because by interpreting, they represent it more strongly than an actual photograph, which in addition only gives you what you already have seen, and you may not even look at it. You say, oh gosh, I've seen it 100 times. But when you see this picture, you look up and you pay attention, and you see for the first time how enormously big that bridge actually is. It never became conscious to you. I think photographs of this kind, they widen your sense of reality, because they show you reality as it really is, so to speak, and not only the way you see it. Let me show you one more picture, which is the opposite. All the ones I showed previously were taken with a telephoto lens. This one's taken with a wide-angle lens, for one reason. I wanted to get the strongest feeling of depth and height in a picture, for which I used distortion deliberately. This is the RCA building, shot from the previous Time and Life building, the roof. I am about halfway the height of the RCA building, looking more or less down. And through strong converging lines, I symbolize the feeling of depth and get a strong feeling of depth. This shows how different lenses have to be used to get different effects, but they have to be used consciously, deliberately. Mm-hmm. The photographer has to know what he's doing.
Do you think, as a photographer, you can make something visually interesting which is
not always
dull for the eye?
Sometimes it's hopeless. Sometimes nothing can be done. If it's dull period, there's nothing you can do. Unless you use certain tricks, but then it isn't real anymore. That is faking. I wouldn't do that.
Could you define what is visually interesting?
Well, it's virtually impossible. You have to feel it. You see, it has to... one important aspect maybe is that it is unusual, that it is eye-catching. And that can be because the subject is unusual, or the light is unusual, or the perspective is unusual. Something has to be so that it catches your eye. If you think, oh, I've seen that already, it's boring, forget it, I wouldn't shoot it.
But there must be as many ways of seeing as there are photographers.
Exactly, of course, yes. But this is my personal way of seeing. And not everybody may agree with me, I know that. These are two pictures of tribal masks I shot in the British Museum. They fascinated me. I have a whole series on this. And I deliberately left the reflections in the picture. I could probably have avoided them, either by using a polarizing filter or by asking somebody to open the cases for me so the glass was removed. But these streaks of reflection here and here and here, I think that adds enormously to the fantastic of these two masks. It is a matter of seeing. You see, I saw it this way, other people would have seen it differently, maybe.
Because, I mean, again, there is an almost obsessional quality with the formal problem of a photograph.
Always. Yes, that is very important. And it also makes the picture somehow more eye-catching, because people will see this and immediately ask what is it, or they may comment and say, didn't the photographer know any better to remove the reflections or watch out for them? Because most amateur photographers in particular discover these things after the fact. For instance, they flash a picture in their living room, shoot the family there, and see in a picture under glass the big reflection of the flash, you know, things like that.
But I think your photographs put a very high demand on the viewer because it cancels out first emotions. I think it is not an immediately emotional impact. It is only
It could
after
be, sometimes it is. I suppose so, yes. That, I think, is unfortunate for the viewer. It is like in modern art. You see paintings that you don't understand at all. The artist doesn't give a damn. That he paints what he wants to paint. If you don't understand it, it's your loss. I feel a little bit like that. I feel very strongly about what I photograph and how I photograph it. If people don't understand it, I think it is because they are not aware of it, what I mean, or sometimes it's hard to explain. You see, I think photography is a means of communication, and I use pictures to communicate. And unless I can communicate, I feel they have failed. But I don't go so far to change my approach to the level of every visually uneducated person, you see. They have to make a little bit of an effort, and I'll be glad to explain what I saw and why I did it, the way I explained to you now, these reflections. And then 99% of the people say, ah, you're right, I never thought of that before. Of course you're right. And it widens their range of vision.
It's very interesting because, I mean, there was a time when photography imitated paintings very much in the 19th century, and then there was the time when one moved away from it.
Yes.
And now, when one looks at your photographs again, it's not that you're imitating paintings, but you come much nearer to the modern painting again.
To the spirit of the modern
To the spirit of the modern
painting. The interpretation rather than
the representation.
The representation,
Yes.
that's right. That's
Which is actually
true.
very interesting because one has almost come full circle again.
Yes, yes. To me, a photograph that only shows me something that I've seen before, especially in reality, but also in picture form, is a boring picture. I've seen it before, why should I look at it again? I demand from any photograph that it gives me something, that it speaks to me, that it tells me something. And I try to give that in all of my pictures, something that I think is a little bit new to the person who looks at it.
David Hockney said he paints and takes photographs. Yeah. He said that a painting is an accumulation of moments and time and so on, and the photograph is the frozen moment.
That's true.
And do you feel the same?
I know it, and that is one of the disadvantages of photography in regard to painting, in comparison to painting. And you have to be much more observant and careful, because the moment is so terribly important, the right moment. In painting, you can change anything, anytime, if you are not happy with it. In a photograph, once you push the button, it's done, finished. You can't do a thing about it.
Mr. Feininger, you seem to be very much preoccupied, almost obsessed with technique.
Well, I wouldn't call it obsessed with technique, because I use technique the way a writer uses words or grammar. In other words, I try to express myself as clearly as I can to make a certain statement. And as a writer would select certain words from a number of synonyms, so I select my means of expression, the graphic means of expression. And the more I know, the more of these means I have at my hand, the better I can find the one that fits the occasion best, the better I can express myself. So technique for me is strictly means to an end. I'm not interested in technique as such. I use it because I have to.